And hello YouTube, this is Thomas Judge back once again, and I've just watched my 10th MCU movie in 10 days. I just saw Guardians of the Galaxy, Volume 1. What can I say? Great movie. I remember enjoying it the first time round when I saw it in the cinema, and I enjoyed it this time round. It's smart, it's funny, it's clever, it's well put together, and it's just a good, solid movie. Um, let's dive into it. So the film starts with a prologue, which is set in the 1980s when Peter Quill's still a young boy and he's got his mother dying, and then he gets abducted, and then it moves straight into the space story and the hardcore kind of space opera action comedy that it is. It's easy to underestimate how clever that prologue is, because if the film didn't have that scene and it just dives straight into Peter as an adult going to Morag and getting the Infinity Stone and spaceships and aliens and stuff, it wouldn't have had anything like the same amount of humanity in the movie. But starting it off like that, not just with the scene on Earth, not just with the scene with him as a child, but with a really human scene, a scene of someone losing their mother to cancer, and actually well acted and well put together, it really roots the entire movie from that point on, irrespective of what happens subsequently. It really roots it in a human, relatable, small scale. And I think, although it's a small thing that they did, it's incredibly clever and very, very effective. Um, what else can I say? Amazing soundtrack. The music really sets the tone. Obviously, it starts off with Peter getting the Infinity Stone from Morag. Question: how did it get there in the first place? But again, like with so many other things, let's not pull threads. And then there's the sort of preliminary action beat, which is where he's fighting Gamora and meets Rocket and Groot, and then they all get arrested. And then it moves into the bit where they're in prison, which is just great scene setting, great team building. Again, it has that kind of Joss Whedon feel. I know it's done by James Gunn, but he's really excelled at that thing that really only Joss Whedon normally excels at, which is putting together disparate characters and welding together a team of broken people into a functional whole. Um, Later on, then, just as they're escaping the kiln and getting away, we then have a scene where Ronin meets Thanos. This is the first time Thanos actually talks, and it's kind of cool to see, because it's not necessarily essential for this movie, but it's definitely essential for where this movie fits in the broader narrative. We also see the Other again, who's the sort of evil dude that was threatening Loki. And I now remember what happens to him. Ronin kills him with literally just the wave of a hand. So that's pretty cool. Um, we then have the film go to nowhere, and this is interesting because the scene with nowhere is kind of the middle section of the movie, and it's framed topped and tailed by very parallel sequences. One is the sequence where they escape from the prison, and then the other side of it is the sequence where they escape from nowhere. Um, so yeah, it's well done. It's well put together. It's nicely balanced with sort of a continuous flurry of action, but with the right sort of beats that you'd expect, given you've got a three arc structure. Like I say, the second arc is topped and tailed with action rather than just finished with it, but it works out really well. Um, the scene on Yondu's ship where Peter and the team talk, I mean, I know it's kind of a famous scene because it's where they all decide to, yeah, they're all going to work together. But again, great bit of characterization, great bit of team building. And then, of course, you have the Xandar battle, which is just good. I mean, it's an effective space superhero sort of battle. One thing I did like is that even though it had essentially zombie aliens, like these Necron things that Ronan's using, and he refers to them as Necrocraft and so on. They don't lean into that. They don't get all dark and weird and stupid like, for example, Chronicles of Riddick did. They accept that, yeah, we've got this sort of dark, macabre side to our sci-fi, but you know what? It doesn't match the tone of the movie, so let's just gloss right over it. Um, yeah, and then obviously at the end, the dance-off that saves the universe. Good, solid end. It's funny throughout. It's just a solid, enjoyable movie. What are my final thoughts? The official soundtrack, so not the soundtrack of the sort of licensed music, but the official soundtrack has a few notes and a few riffs in it that are very evocative of the future Endgame soundtrack, which I thought was really interesting. Maybe that's just me. Let me know your thoughts. And finally, in terms of where this movie fits in the MCU, this movie fits perfectly. It's got exactly the right tone. It's an interesting shift to like a comedy, brightly coloured kind of vibe, but it works really well. But actually, this only works because it's the 10th movie in the MCU. If you had this as a standalone movie and none of the other MCU movies existed, this wouldn't have worked anywhere near as well. You wouldn't have had any of the Thanos stuff, and you wouldn't have been able to lean into some of the stuff about the Infinity Stones and various bits and pieces without it seeming too grandiose. I talked about this in my Thor the Dark World review. It would have gone from 0 to 60 way too fast, whereas in this case, talking about the Infinity Stones, well, it's something that's been hinted at strongly for the last 3 or 4 movies, as is Thanos and his powers. So you've now got to a point where this film can exist as a standalone, but it's definitely strengthened by being part of a larger whole. Anyway, those are my thoughts. This was great fun, and now tomorrow I'm going to be watching the 11th movie, which isn't the end of Phase 2, but is almost the end of Phase 2, and that's going to be Avengers Age of Ultron. So please let me know your thoughts. As always, please like, comment, subscribe, support the channel by heading over to Amazon and picking up the free prose superhero novel I've written called No Gods or Kings, and let me know if you're following along at home with this watch through. As always, until next time, when I'll be watching Age of Ultron, stay classy.